He died and came back to life. We're going to hear his story, and we take you to Ukraine to hear how an abandoned child's life was turned around by the love and generosity of Canadians.
Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, and we are Canada's home for hope. And this month, we are celebrating, along with you, Black History Month. Cheryl, you're going to tell us about an amazing Canadian woman that maybe some people haven't heard about.
I didn't know about her until I started researching this. So she's known as Canada's First Lady of Jazz. Her name, Eleanor Collins. She was a member of the Order of Canada. And she's recognized because she had so many accomplishments. She broke ground at a time when women, and especially Black women, had a lot of barriers to opportunity. This was in the 1940s, Joe.
That's unbelievable. And she really was a trailblazer. She was also the first Black host of a national TV show in North America, the Eleanor Collins Show, in the 1950s. I mean, today we see, so much diversity on television, but like in the 40s and 50s, that wasn't a thing. So, I mean, this was a really big deal.
Even being on television was a big deal, right? Because there wasn't the number of channels and opportunities that there is now. And I think one of the things I thought was so cool about her is that she didn't let these obstacles stop her. I know for myself as a woman in certain areas, you think, well, I'm probably not going to have opportunity there, because there's still gender barriers. But she never let any of that stop her. And it, made me sad that her neighbors in Burnaby, BC, actually wanted her to move away. So instead of just kind of giving in and getting out of the neighborhood as they were trying to kick her out, she volunteered at community events and she volunteered at her children's school. She wanted to show them, and she said, we're just ordinary people with the same values and concerns as they had. And Joe, when we have discrimination or racism or anything in our heart against the person we're not familiar with, sometimes just getting to know that person can pull down those barriers.
100%. They always say we fear what we don't know. And when you get to know people, that fear usually melts away. And it's like, it's so easy to dislike a movement or somebody. But when you get to know that person, when there's a face there, that's a different story.
They're just like us. That's what you realize.
Well, she lived a long and a blessed life. She actually just passed away last year on March 3rd at 105 years old. May we all live to be that old.
What a force of nature.
Yeah, she's an inspiration. And, and now we're going to go from one end of the spectrum to another, from 105 years old to the story of a child who was abandoned even though they'd never knew love.
We're so excited to bring you this story. We're going to take you to Ukraine to meet Roman. He was filled with hatred because of what he'd been through in life. That can happen sometimes. You just get so angry. Thankfully, that's not the end of his story. Encountering love for the first time dramatically transformed him.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to look forward to that. But first, an incredible story of a man whose life was forever changed when he died and met God. Here's Jonathan Kerr.
Life is about love and being here for a reason. We're here for a reason and a purpose. When we find our gift, we use it. Your gift is something that is important to this world. This world needs your gift because your gift is what helps this world. A lot of people make the same decisions because their environment stays the same. But if you change their environment, you change their outlook on life. And when you change the outlook on someone's life, they'll make better decisions because now they have more to look forward to. I mean, God gives us a purpose in this life. That's all I'm doing, using the gift to help someone else. I grew up in Toronto in a loving family. My dad was very strict where school is concerned, and my mom was very strict when it came to spirituality. However, they split and life got different. When my dad and my mom split, we were struggling. Some nights you didn't eat. My dad didn't know this, so it's not to blame him. Like, where was he? Just what it was. And I used to blame God, like, why am I in this position? Like, I'm a kid. I shouldn't be dealing with this. Going through those emotions of, not having my dad around. I leaned more into music, which that's how I started really playing drums. That was the reason why I was going to church, to be honest, because I didn't have a set at home. I did go through a moment where I doubted God. I didn't understand, like, why am I struggling with my mother We're going to church. She's praying to him. But we're still going through this struggle, you know? Felt like maybe he's not listening to us. I'm trying my best not to get in trouble. But what is he doing for us? At that time, I wasn't realizing the blessings that he's given me. For me, where everything, I guess, changed, where I wanted to know who God was I found out I had sickle cell anemia. That was like at age 12. Went through, believe it was like 17, always in and out of the hospital. Sometimes never like life-threatening, but it was enough to put you in the hospital, like, you know. I'm always hearing my mom pray to God, you know. I was like, man, let me see what this is about, you know. Because again, I was just going to church just to play drums. I love music that much. I'd go and I put God to the test. I'm like, if you're really God, heal me from this. I don't want to feel no more pain. He actually did it. From that time, I haven't been in and out of the hospital like that, how I was from 12 to about 17. It was always in and out no matter what. It stopped. So that was my introduction to God, where I started trusting him and believing him. He was setting the stage for me to go through one of the biggest fights I could ever go through. The ending of March, I would say, in 2021, I started feeling weird. My mom, my dad, they called the ambulance. The ambulance came and picked me up. I heard them say like my kidneys were shutting down. I was in a coma, pretty much fighting for my life. My family, they were always getting calls from the hospital, and the hospital was telling them there's nothing they could do. It's over. And my family started preparing for my funeral. It's recorded, like I died at one point on the table. And, you know, me and God had a talk where he was just like, you know, he said, let's go. You don't need to prove anything anymore to anyone. You know, you have an amazing heart, and that's what I love about you. In my mind, I was like, what is going on here? He asked me one question, you don't want to go with me? And I was like, I do, but heaven is my children, you know. I don't want to leave them. He granted me that moment. However, he gave me some instructions. When I go back, I need to focus, and I need not to make anyone distract me from why I'm going back. Before he let me go, he said one thing to me. He's like, this time, I'm with you. It doesn't matter where you are, I'm with you. And to be honest, that voice sticks with me forever. That peace, it may not be the same feeling because I believe his presence is one of a kind, but I try to have a replica of that peace. I could have been a troubled youth. I actually had my moments where I was a troubled youth, but someone reached out and helped me. Me doing it now is just me extending my hand back out for what someone did for me, actually. And I find it amazing that the little things we do, we don't realize it's big in someone's life. I may look at life like this. Whatever I need, I know I could get it from God. It's just I gotta wait. Sometimes I gotta wait. His timing is different than mine. I count my blessings and I name them one by one, you know. To see what I'm coming from is, I'm just grateful.
What a touching story. You know what really hit me about that is that when he's dying and he is hearing God speak to him, You know, like we think God's going to be like, oh, Joe, you know, like you're in trouble, like you messed up, or Cheryl, like, you know. God said, I love your heart. You have a great heart. It's what I love about you, and I will always be with you. Like, I mean, how encouraging is that, to think that if you were to meet God or hear from him right now, he's going to say, I'm never going to leave you. I'm never going to forsake you. I created you. I love this about you. Like, man, how much do we need to hear that in our culture, which kind of can be critical sometimes and negative?
Sometimes, you know, and I loved his demeanor. He was very chill. He was very relaxed. He's very confident because he knows his God is with him, that no matter what he's been through, no matter where he's gone in his life, he knows that his God is with him. And, you know, Cheryl, I was thinking about, you know, the scripture that we all know so well in Proverbs chapter 3, where it says, trust in the Lord with what? With all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Because I'm sure in that moment he wasn't understanding why he was dying, why he was going through that. But it says, in all your ways, if you submit to him, he will make your path straight. And so that's really a word of encouragement. Sometimes, you know, our path seems, it's like this. It's up and it's down, and it seems more down than it is up. And we're like, Lord, where are you? And he says, you know, I'm right here. I'm with you, I'm for you, and I'm proud of you, and I love you. And I love that encouragement. And maybe you're going through a season where you feel like life is taking you on a sharp right, and you're getting further and further from the light, and it's getting darker and colder. You know, first of all, you can come back today. And secondly, God has never left you. And if you want someone to pray with you, we want to encourage you to call our prayer lines, 1-866-273-4444. And somebody will pray with you, and they'll walk you through these promises of God. And we know that it's going to be an encouragement. We don't just say that we are Canada's hope. We want to really believe that we do bring hope, because hope is found in Christ.
And, you know, sometimes you just need somebody with skin on, right? Like, yeah, you know God's with you. Yeah, you know he loves you. Yeah, you know he's never going to leave you. But sometimes you just need to actually have somebody tell you that. Pray with you about that. Pray with you about your loneliness, or, you know, the abandonment that you might feel, or the discouragement that you might be struggling with. That's why we have that resource there for you. So I really hope you take advantage of it. If not this moment, write down that number, 1-866-273-4444. Who knows when you're going to need it, and we want you to take advantage of it.
Amen. Well, I'm glad you can see what's on the screen there. So how is your eyesight, Cheryl?
It's okay today. Yeah, we're doing all right.
Okay, well, I heard a rumor that we're going to check in today with Daniel M., and he's going to help us to see clearly.
How clearly do you see things? Do you see Jesus' hand on your life, both in the blessings and in the hardships? Do you believe that Jesus is for you, even when it might seem like he's forgotten you or is against you? Do you know that Jesus' ways are higher than your ways, that his thoughts are higher than your thoughts, that his timing is often not our timing? The man who wrote one of the most famous songs of all time, he would have not have been able to write it if he hadn't gone through all that he had gone through. As a child, he hardly saw his father because of his dad's work. By age 11, his mom died. As a young man, he was forced into naval service, but because of his poor behavior, he was sent onto a slave ship where he was chained on deck as a captive. He almost died on his way back to England because of a massive storm on the sea. And it was at this time when he met Jesus and dedicated himself to God. And while he began to start seeing clearly, his spiritual blindness wasn't yet cured. For work, he became a captain of a slave ship in the slave trade. And even though he disagreed with what he was doing, he didn't know what else to do. He believed he was a failure on almost every front. But then, after his ship was seized, he felt like this was a release from a life in which he felt trapped. He began serving God through ministry in the church, through writing letters, through writing hymns, and as he began to see ever more clearly and clearly, he wrote one of the most well-recognized and famous hymns of all time. Amazing Grace. Right, you know this song. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. We're talking about John Newton here. Now, while I may not know everything that's going on in your life right now, my question to you is whether or not you have faith to believe that God does, that he knows everything going on with you. Do you have faith to believe that he will make a way where there seems to be no way? So that together with John Newton, you may boldly proclaim, I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
This month, as our thanks for your ministry support of Crossroads in 100 Huntley Street, we're excited to offer the book Sacred Prayer, 90 Days of Deeper Intimacy with God by beloved Canadian author Anne Voskamp.
True prayer isn't about changing God's mind, but about finding God's heart and letting His heart change our minds.
Drawing from her own intimate walk with God, Anne shares the profound yet simple sacred method of prayer. 6 steps that open the door to genuine communication with our Creator.
Through these pages, you'll discover how to transform anxiety into peace, turn routine into revelation, and make each prayer an intimate conversation with the one who loves you most.
With a gift of $40 or more, or when you become a new monthly partner, request your copy. Call 1-800-265-3100 or visit crossroads.ca/prayer.
You know, in Anne Voskamp's book, Sacred Prayers, 90 Days of Deeper Intimacy with God, you know, there's a central theme, and it's all about cultivating a deeper, more intimate relationship with God through structured prayer practices. And she introduces something called SACRED. It's an acronym, and it's a framework, and it represents 6 different steps. And the first one is stillness. That's pausing to know God. Second one is attentiveness, listening to hear God's voice. Cruciformity, surrendering oneself to God. Revelation, seeking to see God more clearly. Examine, reflecting to turn to God. And then doxology, offering thanks and praise to God. It's a simple acronym, but there are steps and there are guidelines to help keep us on that track of seeking God, pursuing God, that intimate relationship that we get in prayer. And this is something that we want to get into your hands this month. We believe that it's really going to help you grow in your relationship with God. And today, when you give a gift of $40 or more, we want to send this to you to help you cultivate that prayer life in your spiritual walk. So please call 1-800-265-3100, or you can go to crossroads.ca/prayer. And again, when you give your gift of $40 or more, we want to send that to you. Well, right now, friends, we're going to invite you to grab some Kleenex, because now we're going to take you to Ukraine to meet someone named Roman, whose life was void of love, and it was leading him towards a very, very dark future.
Roman clearly remembers the day he was sent to an orphanage. Although his parents were both alive, alcoholism, violence, and poverty had made his home situation unlivable. When his mother went to the Ukrainian government to give him away, something broke inside of him. He was 7 years old.
When I left the orphanage, I was so frustrated and angry with my mother. During a family gathering at Christmas, when everybody was happy, exchanging gifts and singing songs, I was still so angry with my mother for breaking up the family.
For the next 7 years, anger and bitterness were his constant companions.
Every night when I went to sleep, I became more and more angry at the world. I hated everybody. It just got worse and worse. I was like a monster, closed off, frustrated. I just felt so cold towards people. I hated them.
But help was coming, although he didn't know it. Students from a seminary outreach program funded by Crossroads Relief and Development invited him and others to a Christian camp for Christmas. Although it was supposed to be a joyful time, Roman didn't quite see things that way.
I didn't know what love was. I was rude, frustrated, hated everyone. It felt strange to me that others were different from that somehow. I didn't understand why other people were so good. I even tested them. I did something bad to them, and they did not react in a bad way. I didn't understand.
This unusual response to his bad behavior caught his attention. So when the students invited him to church, he went. It turned out to be a life-changing decision.
I visited church, and I finally understood that the Lord called me. And I started to go to church every week. There was a moment that I started to understand what love is. It was like somebody opened my eyes, and I understood that I can love and not just hate. It was very strange in my life. I started to love from that day on.
Roman's life was irrevocably changed. But despite giving his life to God and receiving this great love, there was still that deep wound of rejection from his mother.
Well, stay tuned. Part 2 is coming by in just a minute. Now, I know that this is something that Crossroads Cares has been a part of for a long time, helping with orphanages in Ukraine.
Yeah, more than 15 years. And it's so cool now because it's been so long. There's more to Roman's story that you're going to see, but it's like we can track the transformation now.
I love that, yeah.
Right? These kids, and I love what he said about how he didn't believe love was real. He was angry. Like, who would he have turned out to be? A lot of kids in orphanages in Ukraine, this is pre-war, turned out to be criminals, or they go into prostitution, or, because there's that wound of abandonment, right? If you've never been loved, you never have hope.
Absolutely, and there, like you said, there's more to the story, and so many of these, kids, teenagers, young people, they feel so abandoned, they feel so unloved, and that's why what Crossroads Cares is so important. It's a practical, tangible way to show people the love of God. Well, now we want to continue with this amazing story.
Roman was abandoned by his alcoholic parents into a Ukrainian state-run orphanage at age 7. But a Christmas camp outreach by seminary students, funded by Crossroads Relief and Development, gave him a chance to experience love for the first time. When he realized that love came from God, he committed his life to him.
It was like somebody opened my eyes, and I understood that I can love and not just hate. It was very strange in my life. I started to love from that day on.
But despite the changes in him, for the next 2 years he wrestled with hate and anger toward his mother.
One day my mother was making dinner and I said thank you. I didn't usually say thank you to my mother. When she heard this, she almost cried. She looked at me with such happiness.
Roman had never seen his mother happy before. He began to realize she really did love him and gave him up because of her brokenness, not his.
I understood that the Lord also loved me. Before I had bad thoughts, I behaved badly, I was rude. But after this, I started to love my mother.
The forgiveness that followed not only changed his life, but hers as well. She stopped drinking, and their relationship is on the road to recovery. Roman soon shared his story with his church, not realizing how deeply it would resonate.
I found that other believers could relate to my story. They also had frustrations, rude behavior, evil thoughts. They also didn't understand love. When they heard my story, they started to change along with me.
Despite these positive developments, Roman still faced a big challenge. As he got older, the orphanage was going to kick him out, and he had nowhere to go. But hope came again from that same seminary. Seeing his desire to serve people, they offered to sponsor his training for ministry.
He is a very good boy in seminary. He is very stable, like children, visit orphanages. His educational process is well, and it is one of the best students in our seminary, and we like him. He do not have a job, and we help him. He has sponsorship here, and he can stay in our Bible school, sleep, eat, and we help him give some small money for weekends, also some food for weekends, because in his apartment is nothing.
Roman's life has come full circle. He is now one of those seminary students that spends their Saturday visiting orphanages to show abandoned kids God's love. His story deeply resonates with them because they know he understands them.
Young boys came up to me and asked me how I was able to change my life. And after hearing my story, they started to change as well. Their mothers would ask me how I'm able to change their boys' lives. God changed my life, my heart, my soul. I am different now. I don't even know how to be rude or sad anymore. I'm happy. I have love in my heart.
Roman's profound life change would not have been possible without the generous support of Canadians who have sponsored the student outreach since 2006. Crossroads Relief and Development is continuing this work, doing practical projects to improve orphanage conditions and providing support so the outreach can continue.
You know, I love watching these kinds of stories. I love seeing that human connection, and I love seeing that practical love of God in action. You know, we can say, I'm praying for you, and we should pray for Ukraine. We should pray for what people are going through. But man, when it's boots on the ground, when it's rubber meet the road time, that's where people really see the love of God. And this is a beautiful story. I love what he said. He goes, I don't even know how to be mad or sad anymore. And he's smiling because his life has been completely turned around by the love of God.
It's total transformation. And I think, you know, when I watched that story and I think about all these years, almost 20 years of doing this outreach in these orphanages. And you know, we talked about practical care as well. Well, now, 20 years on since the war happened, we're actually fixing up bomb shelters where these orphans are going to school or sleeping through the night. Still, like right now, I'm working on fundraising enough to fix up a bomb shelter.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, it's love, right? Like if you had to say, what is it? Because these kids are still going out, these seminary students are still going out every Saturday to do this work. And they're not stopping, even though the country's at war. They're risking themselves, they're risking getting forcibly conscripted, which is happening to young people, just to continue to show love. And, you know, I think it's love that really changes our hearts. Like nothing else really has the power to transform us like love. And you see it in Roman's life. And, you know, we want to keep supporting. We don't really talk a lot about our orphanage outreach. And so I just thought, you know, it's really important that we share what's happening even in the midst of war. And we want to invite you to partner with us because people's lives are still being changed, like every Saturday, Joe, like clockwork.
I love that. And I'm a big proponent of helping orphanages. You know that. We do that in Africa. I love that we're doing it in Ukraine. And we're going to call on you right now. You've been so faithful over all these years, and we're asking you again to be faithful today. Please call 1-800-265-3100 or go online and give securely. It's so easy to do. crossroads.ca/Ukraine. And you have to understand that even though you may not be able to go, like some of our partners, our dollars go ahead of us and they do things that we never even dreamed that can be done. And it really makes an impact on the ground. Whether it's a gift of $20, $100, $1,000, trust me, when we give collectively, it makes a big difference. You know, you were talking about it's love. And I was thinking right away, of course, of 1 Corinthians 13. We always read it at weddings. But it's not just a wedding verse. It really is a ministry verse. Love can change somebody's situation, and we saw that in Roman's life.
Yeah, and you know what is so interesting about him is that he was not a true orphan, and a lot of kids there have parents who gave them up, and so they really need that love. And we want to send out love for the survivors of the plane crash that happened on Monday at Toronto Airport, Pearson here in Ontario. You know, our concern and our heart is with them. We're thankful for the result isn't as dire as it could have been looking at that fire, but we want you to know that you're in your prayers. And you know, one thing you can always do if you don't feel like you have a calling or any purpose, pray the headlines. There's all kinds of hurt there, and it needs God's love.
I love that. Amen. Thanks for joining us today. That was good.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a supporter-funded nonprofit organization and member of the Canadian Centre for Christian Charities. Thanks to faithful people like you, we are able to continue producing 100 Huntley Street. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R4M2, or visit crossroads.ca to learn more about our programs.